Welcome to the Dealing with Goliath podcast. The mission of Dealing with Goliath is to sharpen the psychological edge in negotiation, ethical influencing, and high impact conversations for business leaders who want to be more effective under pressure, uncover hidden value, and build greater connection, all while increasing profitability. This is the short form espresso shot of insight podcast interview to boost business performance using our 5 questions in around about 15 to 20 minutes. My guest today is Helen Tuddenham. Helen is an executive coach and leadership development consultant who works with experienced professionals to help them untangle the complexities of leadership. She supports them to figure out what's holding them back and eliminate those sticking points. As a result, they gain fresh perspectives on who they are, how they lead, and an ability to take on new challenges and thrive in their career. Prior to setting up her own business, Helen was a director of the People and Culture Risk Team at PwC UK, advising finance, internal audit, and compliance teams on improving compatibility and culture. She is also a non-exec director and chartered accountant. Helen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Al. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here, and I have lots of questions on that. But let's kick off. So who's your ideal client and what's the biggest challenge they tend to face?
Yeah. So I tend to work with people who are quite often in corporate careers. They might be VP or SVP level, or in a practice, they might be on their way to partner, and with business leaders as well. And they tend just to be stuck. They're not quite sure what their next move is. They're quite happy in their role, but they're looking for the next step, and they don't know whether that's promotion or whether it's leaving to go freelance and run their own business or something completely different.
Very good. And just on that, I mean, are they unhappy, or are they fed up, or are they usually just a bit kind of, it's something's not quite clicking as it used to?
It's more that last point about something not quite clicking. So they quite often had been in their organization for a long time, or in this particular business for a long time. And that coasting might be the word that comes to mind. They're doing fine. Nothing's particularly wrong. They're not desperate to leave, but there's just that sense of, is there something better out there for
A
me?
little bit of ennui on there, I think, as they call it. Yeah. So, and it's an interesting one because I often ask guests about that, because I think quite an awful lot of people, when they're listening to this, they can notice the symptoms. They mightn't have come to some of the conclusions we're about to reach just yet, but they're saying, "Oh yeah, I kind of feel a little bit of that," as you said, that nothing's particularly wrong, but it's not fantastic either, as you said, something a bit off. So, what are the common mistakes people make when they're trying to solve that problem? What are some of the approaches that they start with that
Yeah.
may not be a great path?
So I think there's two, and it's about listening to other voices. So quite often they don't have a crystal clear view of themselves about what success means to them. So they haven't stopped and taken the time to think about that or listen to their gut. And so one of two things happens. So either they start listening to an inner negative voice, like an inner critic, and that might be something saying, well, you're not ready to take the next step. You haven't been in business long enough, or you've not been in this role long enough. Or and that tends to come from, let's say, this thing called the inner critic, which is something that I think everyone has.
Sure.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's trying to protect you from something. So that might be, fear of making a mistake or fear of looking stupid. But it's very one-dimensional. Doesn't see things from both sides, and it's very negative as well, and quite limiting. So that's one thing that they might start doing. The other thing is actually listening to a different voice, and that's the sort of outer voices. So that might be friends, it might be family, it might be colleagues, it might be just social media or culture. And from that, they might be picking up messages. Well, if we're in a recession, nobody leaves a job with a good pension to go and run their own business, that kind of thing. And quite often, these voices aren't explicit, but it's what we infer from them, possibly because of the culture that we're in, or the way that we've been brought up. And so they're focusing very much on what other people's view of success is.
It's very interesting stuff. First of all, as you said, the internal critic, what you might even call the culture inside your head, the standard expectations, trigger and response stuff. As you said, that whether the external, the internal cultures are that much different. There might be an awful lot of similarities, as you say, but you're not quite sure what's off. Because if
Yeah.
you're working with, for example, management consultants or people who came through that route, there's an awful lot of expectation of leaning in, of working those long hours, of fighting through, of being quite aggressive toward creating new business, of client work, all that sort of stuff, and that should be your focus. And if you're doing
Yes.
well at it, why aren't you happy? And this kind of, why aren't you fulfilled by your fantastic career? Sure, weren't you made director? And these kind of points, right?
Yes, there's an expression, something about, I'm not going to get this exactly right, but it's something
Mm.
about climbing up the career ladder only to realize that your ladder was against the wrong wall. And I think there's something about people getting on that conveyor belt almost, particularly in big organizations, of going through. If you run your own business, there is kind of a hustle culture to some extent, although I think there's getting a bit of a backlash about that now, which is, you need to get your six figure type thing going on, or you need to be being international, or whatever it is something about chasing the next step. You need to have, you shouldn't be happy just having 3 employees, you should have 10 employees and that kind of thing.
As you said, it's that often the term the last few years is leveling up. Loads of people want to be leveling up. It's
Yeah.
like, at what stage can you just be, you know what, this level is really great for me?
Yeah.
Um, so it's a very interesting question. So what is one valuable free action that the audience can implement that will help them with this issue?
Well, I'd probably like to give them two, if
Oh,
that's
even
okay.
better. Extra,
So
extra plus,
almost
yeah.
one for each voice, I guess. So if you're
Uh-huh.
thinking about the inner critic, a good way of navigating the inner critic is to think about your inner mentor, and that's not my term actually. So there is a coach called Tara Mohr, Mohr, which people might want to research. She's written a book specifically aimed at women, but I think men can get a lot from it as well, called Playing Big. And the inner mentor is your older, wiser self. And the idea with the inner mentor is that you can tap into that. A lot of coaching is about tapping into your own inner wisdom. So when I talk to clients about this, I get them to really bring it to life. So think about you, whether it's 20, 30 years from now, someone who's been there, done that, has lived a good life and has achieved this success, whatever success means to you, and really put some detail around it. So think about what they're wearing, where they're sat, that kind of thing, and just spend some time of focused intention and actually ask that person, even if it's just you and your imagination, saying, what should I do in this situation? Should I go for promotion? Should I leave? Should I do something sideways? Should I run my own business? And sometimes my clients struggle with that a little bit, particularly I work with a lot of accountants and lawyers, and they sometimes struggle with something that's a little bit more imaginative. Quite often people want to replace that voice with like a real life person. So it might be your boss at work or your mentor or even someone like Barack Obama. And there's a danger in that though, that it then becomes just another outer voice.
Mm.
So I really just help them to try and focus in on them in the future, ask the question and just trust what comes up. So that's one free tool I would say for an inner voice. For an outer voice, I think it's something for people just to sit down and think, what does success mean for me? And when I'm working with people about that, I ask them sort of a set of questions. So looking at a few particular areas. So strengths is one. Passions or whatever it is you're interested in is another. Thinking about your values and what's important to you. You're thinking about practical things as well. I'm a pragmatic coach. It might be that you can't emigrate because you've got a young family to think of, that kind of thing. And just diving down deep into those and again seeing what comes up. So what am I really good at? What do I really enjoy doing? And as part of this data collection exercise, you might see some themes coming through. Now, I have to warn people that this isn't necessarily going to bring up this magical magic bullet answer, but what it will do is give you a range of things and a direction in which success is going to sit for you, and a direction that your next career or business move might want to go in. And people do different things with that. So as I said earlier, I have clients who are accountants, and they sometimes like to create a checklist so that if an opportunity comes up, they can measure it against the checklist. Some people actually take it a little bit differently and think about this is me as a leader, and use that to sort of describe the leader that they want to be. And some people don't stick to it very rigidly, but just sort of have it in the background.
Very good. Very interesting. It's fabulous, as you said, that I like the checklist approach. It's like tick, 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 tick. Very methodical. So what is one valuable free resource that you could direct people to that will help?
Yeah, so on that last point, I ask people a set of questions. On my website, there's actually a free career planning exercises document. So it splits it into those sections and actually has those questions written down, and also to help you when you've got that information, how can you kind of figure out what might some of those themes be? So that would be a good free resource for people to use.
Excellent. Excellent stuff. So what was maybe one question I should have asked you that would be of great value?
So I think you mentioned the word should at the at the beginning of this podcast. And I think the question is, well, how do I know if I'm not living up to my own definition of success? And when I'm coaching, in terms of me looking for when someone isn't living up to their definition, there's two or three things I look for. So one is language. So that word should that you mentioned. If the word should comes up, I will often ask, well, who says you should? And quite often that's where the outer voice is coming in. When people are beginning to talk about next steps and options and things that they might want to try out, if the word maybe or possibly comes in there, that suggests to me that they're not fully committed. So I might ask them questions around what's the hesitation. And also the body language as well. So if I'm with someone and they're talking about what they want to try, I was actually talking to a client this morning who was looking to do a move to M&A, mergers and acquisitions. And when she was talking about it, she just didn't sound very excited about it. Some of it is knowing the person, because people have got different energy levels. But just saying that, when you're talking about that, I'm not getting that sense of excitement. What's that about? So as you, the people listening to this, if they're talking to their friends or colleagues about their next career move or where they want to take their business next, just notice whether you're feeling that sense of excitement. So you will feel some sense of anticipation and nervousness because you're trying something new, and that's perfectly normal. But there should also be a bit of excitement there rather than dread or boredom or just kind of ambivalence, really. And then just the final thing is just notice if you start to compare yourself to others. So again, social media is great for this, but if you're thinking, well, that person's doing this with their business and I'm not, so maybe I should start a newsletter, maybe I should open a second office, maybe I should start a podcast. If it's not what you want to do, but you feel you should because you're comparing yourself to other people, that's when I would always say, go back to this North Star of what success means for you.
It's an excellent point. I love that because, as you say, the should is the root of so much human suffering,
Yeah.
precisely because it often evokes that sense of comparison, which of course evokes senses of lack and all of these issues, and not feeling worthy of something or feeling lack of progress in another way. Very good. So, where can people find out more about you and potentially get in touch, Helen?
Yeah, so my website is www.helentuddenhamconsulting.com. There are not many Helen Tuddenhams around on the internet.
Just to be clear on that one, it's Helen, Tudd, enhamconsulting.com, just so they have the
Yes.
spelling.
Yeah.
It'll be under the video and under in the podcast notes, of course.
Yeah.
And you're
And you can
active on
find me
LinkedIn?
on sorry, so you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Exactly. Fabulous stuff. Well, Helen, fabulous to have you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Al. Take care.
Cheers.